I never imagined I would ever say this out loud, but there was a night when I felt something inside me fall apart. A night when everything that once made sense suddenly felt blurry, distant, and painfully out of reach. And what still surprises me the most is that the one who pulled me back from that dark, silent place wasn't a person. It wasn't a friend or a family member, or even a voice on the phone. It was my cat, my sweet, loyal, almost mystically intuitive cat, Oliver. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me start by saying this. If someone had told me years ago that an animal, a creature who couldn't speak my language or understand the complexity of what humans go through, would one day become the anchor that held me together, I would have laughed. I would have said they were exaggerating, romanticizing, or simply projecting their emotions onto a pet. But today, after everything that happened, I know better. Animals feel things. They sense things. They catch the tremors inside us long before we ever admit they're there. And Oliver wasn't just a cat to me. He was my mirror, my companion, my guardian in ways I didn't understand until it mattered the most. I adopted Oliver almost 3 years before that night. He was tiny when I first saw him at the shelter, a little orange tabby curled into the corner of his cage, looking like he was trying to make himself invisible. While the other cats meowed and pushed their faces through the bars hoping for attention, he stayed quiet. Not fearful, just observant, as if studying everyone carefully. When I approached, he lifted his head and stared at me with these round, deep amber eyes. It felt like he was searching for something in me, something hidden behind the smile I forced onto my face as I crouched down to greet him. The shelter volunteer told me he had been found alone behind an old warehouse. No mother, no siblings, no explanation. "He's calm," she said. Not shy exactly, just thoughtful. That was the word she used. Thoughtful. I never knew a cat could be described that way, but after living with Oliver, I understood it perfectly. I had moved into a small apartment around that time, trying to rebuild myself after a challenging series of events that left me emotionally drained. I thought adopting a pet would bring some comfort, or at least a distraction. What I didn't expect was how quickly Oliver would become part of my daily routine, my emotional rhythm, my sense of home. He followed me around like a shadow, not overly clingy, but present, always present. He'd sit next to me while I worked, curl up on my legs when I watched TV, nudge my hand gently whenever I got too still, as if reminding me to come back to the world. And I know this may sound strange, but he always knew when something was wrong. If I cried, even quietly, he'd appear out of nowhere, climb onto my chest, and press his forehead against mine. If I was overwhelmed, he would weave figure eights around my ankles until I smiled. He seemed to sense the emotional storms before even I felt them fully. And usually, that was enough to pull me through the day. But that night was different. That night, the storm didn't just form. It consumed me. It started quietly, like most things that slowly build without warning. I had spent the entire day feeling exhausted for reasons I couldn't explain. It wasn't the normal tiredness you fix with sleep. It was something heavier, like someone had placed a weight on my chest that followed me everywhere I went. I tried ignoring it, telling myself it was nothing, that it would pass. I kept working, kept cleaning, kept pushing through the motions of a normal day, hoping it would fade away. But it didn't. By the time the sun went down, the weight inside me had grown into something sharp, something overwhelming. My breathing felt shallow. My thoughts felt tangled. My heart felt restless, like it didn't know where to settle. I tried focusing on simple things, washing dishes, folding clothes, preparing dinner, but everything felt pointless, automatic, detached from any real meaning. I remember standing in the kitchen with my hands under the running faucet, warm water flowing over my fingers, and thinking, why am I even doing this? Why does any of this matter right now? Oliver was in the living room when it started becoming too much. He was stretched out on the arm of the couch, his tail flicking lazily back and forth. He always looked relaxed in the evenings, like he knew it was his time to unwind. Usually when I walked past him, he would chirp softly or nudge my arm as I passed. But that night, he lifted his head and watched me, not casually, not in the bored, slow blink way cats often do. His body shifted, tense, alert, his ears angled forward. His tail stopped moving. He knew something was wrong. I walked into my bedroom trying to breathe deeply, trying to calm the tremble forming in my stomach. My thoughts were getting louder, more chaotic, echoing in ways that made it hard to distinguish one feeling from another. I felt overwhelmed, scared of the intensity of my own emotions. It was the kind of storm I had always managed to contain before, but that night, it felt like the walls inside me were crumbling. I sat on the edge of my bed and put my head in my hands, elbows on my knees. I didn't want to cry, but the tears came anyway. Silent, hot, unstoppable. I felt small, fragile, and entirely alone, even though I knew Oliver was somewhere in the apartment. My chest tightened and my breath shook, and the room felt smaller and darker with every passing second. I didn't call anyone. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't try to distract myself. I just let the emotions spill over me like a tide I couldn't control. It was the closest I had ever come to losing myself, to losing hope in everything I had fought so hard to rebuild. And then, I heard it, a tiny sound. A soft, almost questioning meow from the bedroom doorway. Not the usual one he used when he wanted food or attention. This one was different. Gentle, careful, concerned. I didn't look up at first. I couldn't. But the next thing I felt was the mattress dipping slightly beside me. Then a warm little body pressed against my thigh, a head nudging insistently against my arm. I finally lifted my face from my hands, and there he was, Oliver, standing on the bed, staring at me with those deep amber eyes, his expression filled with something I can only describe as pure, unconditional understanding. He didn't panic. He didn't meow again. He just looked at me, then gently raised his paw and placed it on my arm. It broke me in a completely different way. Not in despair, this time in relief. In that moment, the storm inside me didn't vanish, but it paused, just long enough for me to take a real breath, just long enough for my mind to stop spiraling. Oliver moved closer, circling once before settling directly against my side, his body warm and steady. He pressed himself into me, stretching one paw across my stomach like he was hugging me. And then he purred, a deep, steady vibration that echoed through my ribs. I'd heard him purr thousands of times, but never like that. This one wasn't his usual comfort purr. It was stronger, intentional. It felt like he was trying to anchor me to something real, something solid, something outside of the darkness I had slipped into. The sound filled the room, warm and rhythmic, grounding me with every inhale and exhale. I started crying again, but these weren't the same tears. They weren't hopeless. They weren't empty. They were releasing something that had been trapped inside me for too long. As they fell, Oliver lifted his head and touched my chin with his nose, almost like he was saying, "I'm here. Don't drift away." I lay back on the bed slowly, and he climbed onto my chest, settling his weight right over my heart. His paws kneaded gently at my collarbone, his eyes half closed but still watching me closely. The pressure of his little body, the warmth of his fur, the steady hum of his purr. It brought me back from a place I hadn't even realized I was capable of reaching. Time passed in a way I couldn't measure. It might have been minutes, maybe an hour, maybe longer. All I know is that at some point, my breathing steadied. My thoughts became clearer. My face relaxed. And Oliver, he never moved. not once. Gradually, the weight inside my chest loosened, even if just a little. Enough for me to feel something other than the overwhelming rush that had taken over earlier. Enough for me to look down at Oliver resting peacefully on my chest and feel, not despair, but gratitude. A quiet swell of gratitude that made my heart ache in a completely different way. He saved me that night. I've replayed the moment so many times in my mind that I can still feel the exact warmth of his fur, the softness of his paws, the slow rhythm of his breathing syncing with mine, as if he had decided he would carry the pieces of me until I could carry them myself again. He stayed like that, curled up on my chest, until my tears dried, until my breathing stabilized, until I found the strength to sit up again. And even then, when I finally moved, he didn't let me go far. He climbed onto my lap, pressed his body into mine, and looked up as if waiting for me to tell him I was okay. But I wasn't. Not fully. Not yet. Still, seeing him so determined, so unwilling to leave my side, made something inside me glow softly in the dark. It made me feel seen, held, even without words. I pulled him closer and felt his head settle under my chin. He let out a gentle sigh, the kind pets make when they know you're trying. And in that moment, that tiny sound felt like permission. Permission to feel. Permission to heal. Permission to admit that I wasn't okay. But I could be. For the first time in hours, I stood up. I walked to the living room with him in my arms, and he didn't complain or try to wiggle free. He stayed wrapped around me like a small, warm, breathing heart. I sat on the couch, holding him tightly, my hands buried in the softness of his fur, and I whispered into the quiet apartment. "Thank you, Oliver. I don't know what I would have done tonight without you." He lifted his head and blinked at me slowly, the famous cat. "I love you." I'd seen it 100 times, but that night, it meant more. It meant everything. I kept all the lights off except one lamp by the window. The room glowed softly, casting a warm, golden light over us. The city outside hummed with distant sounds, cars passing, a dog barking somewhere, the faint noise of someone closing a door. Normal things. Life happening. And for a moment, I let myself feel connected to it again. Oliver eventually climbed onto the couch beside me and curled into a tight little ball against my hip. But he didn't fall asleep. Every few seconds he opened his eyes and checked on me. He'd stretch his paw out until it touched my leg, as if making sure I was still there. As if reminding me that he was still there. And I realized something then. Something important. Something raw and honest. I had been carrying more inside me than I ever admitted. Pushing through days, ignoring signs, convincing myself that I was fine because I didn't want to burden anyone or slow down or appear fragile. I'd been stretching myself thinner and thinner, emotionally, mentally, until the smallest push made everything snap at once. But Oliver had seen it long before I did. He always did. Cats sense things in ways that defy explanation. It's not mystical, it's instinct. They read your movement, your tone, your breathing, your silence. They know when energy shifts. They know when something feels off. And Oliver had been watching me closely for days, maybe weeks, noticing the subtle changes I had ignored. He had tried to warn me. He'd been more clingy, more vocal, more watchful. He'd followed me from room to room like a guardian with a mission. And I had brushed it off, thinking he just wanted extra attention. Now I know better. He wasn't asking for anything. He was trying to give something. Comfort, stability, connection, hope. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a blanket draped over my legs, the one I keep on the backrest for movie nights. I didn't remember grabbing it. Oliver was lying on my chest again, this time sleeping deeply, completely trusting, his little face relaxed and innocent. His whiskers twitched as he dreamed, his ears wiggling at sounds I couldn't hear. I didn't move. I didn't want to. I just lay there watching him breathe, feeling the steady rise and fall of his body against mine. And something inside me felt different. Still tired, still fragile, still recovering, but lighter. Like the darkest part of the night had passed, and there was space now for something better to enter. Space for air, space for hope. I stroked his fur gently, and he let out a sleepy, broken purr. It vibrated weakly at first, then grew stronger, like a motor warming up. I smiled for the first time since the storm began. It wasn't forced. It wasn't fake. It was small and fragile, yes, but real. Later that day, while I made breakfast, Oliver sat on the countertop watching me closely, his tail wrapped neatly around his paws. He tilted his head as if analyzing every movement. When I reached for the fridge, he stretched a paw toward me like he was reminding me to slow down. When I sighed quietly, he meowed, sharp and firm, like he was correcting me. And when I set a plate on the table and sat down, he immediately hopped onto the chair beside me and rested his chin on my thigh. He didn't leave my side the entire morning, and I didn't push him away. Not anymore. I needed him. And somehow, he knew I finally understood that. In the days that followed, I began to rebuild myself slowly. I took time to rest. I took time to think. I let myself feel instead of burying everything under schedules and responsibilities. I talked to someone I trusted about how overwhelmed I had been. I opened up in ways I hadn't before, and every step of the way, Oliver was there, watching, guiding, anchoring me in moments when I felt myself slipping again. There were times when the tears returned unexpectedly, not as strong, not as crushing, but enough to sting. Each time, Oliver appeared instantly, placing his warm little paws on my leg or curling himself against my stomach until the moment passed. He had taken on the role of my emotional guardian and wore it with this quiet, steady determination that left me in awe. I sometimes wonder what would have happened that night if I didn't have him. If I had come home to an empty apartment, to silence, to darkness. If no small heart had reached out to keep mine steady. I don't know the answer. And honestly, I don't want to know. What I do know is this. Animals don't need to speak to understand us. They don't need words to love us. And they don't need instructions to save us when we need saving. Oliver became my strength that night, my tiny hero, without even knowing he was one. He didn't wait for me to ask for help. He didn't hesitate or walk away or misunderstand the moment. He came to me with pure instinct, pure emotion, pure loyalty. And because of him, I found my way back to myself. Even now, months later, I still catch him watching me from across the room, making sure I'm okay. Sometimes he jumps into my lap out of nowhere, purring loudly even though nothing is wrong. Sometimes he curls up beside me at night instead of sleeping at the foot of the bed like he used to. It's like that night changed him too. Like he decided he wouldn't let me drift that far away ever again. And I let him. I let him stay close. Because I know now, without question, that he understands me in a way no one else ever truly has. The night I lost hope, my cat became my strength. Not through dramatic gestures or loud declarations, but through presence, through warmth. Through the simple, unwavering truth that sometimes the smallest heart in the room can carry the heaviest part of yours when you can't. And I will never forget that. Not for as long as I live. He saved me. And every morning when he curls up next to me, every evening when he greets me at the door, every quiet moment when he rests his head on my hand, I remember. And I whisper it softly so only he can hear. Thank you for staying. Thank you for saving me. Thank you so much for watching and for staying with me through this story. Your presence here means more than you know. If this video touched your heart, please consider subscribing leaving a like, or sharing it with someone who may need a moment of comfort today. Your support helps these stories reach more people who might be going through something silently. Thank you again for being here, and may you always find the light you need, even in your darkest nights.